Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we will read the final part of the story about a man whose parents treated him like he was the unwanted child after his little sister was born, who then became their beloved golden child. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 yet, I highly recommend watching it on our channel first to fully understand the story and its progression. Let's get started. As for me, well, my 19th birthday wasn't that long ago. My grandparents threw me a party at a restaurant they know I like. My parents attended, and so did my sister. She was briefly allowed time out of the ward, and I could see the pure bitterness in her eyes. She sat there looking just like before, lip curled and glaring at me like she wanted me to be on fire. She had lost a fair bit of weight by then, since she hadn't been allowed junk food for so long, and her diet plan is going to keep on for some time to come. In fact, the junk food for my birthday party was the first she'd had in a pretty long time. But she still couldn't stand not being the center of attention. This time when I blew out my candles, she did not scream. Instead, she began ugly crying. I can tell you right now that this was just more of her manipulation. She was just crying and saying why over and over again. I know she's only 9, but remember, last year she was 8 and demanding a car of her own just because I was gifted one at 18. She can't even get a learner's permit till she's 15. At my 19th birthday, my sister got on the floor to tantrum that there was no pizza, no gifts for her, no prizes, no nothing. Then she started cursing at our parents before trying to storm out of the restaurant. She was basically trying to copy what I did last year in her own twisted way. You can say I'm thinking too hard about that, but I know my sister, and if she thinks doing something will get her way, she'll do it. My parents just apologized to everyone and then took my sister home early, but not before my grandfather went over to speak to them. I got some details from my grandmother later. He told them that they better not take my sister to party elsewhere or give her what she wants, because this will never end if they don't stop for good. After that, my sister was taken out kicking and screaming because she'd heard everything and realized her tantrums didn't work. She was driven back to the ward the next morning, and that's where she is now. I have no idea how much longer she'll be there. She's just a kid, but the most stubborn one I've ever seen. She'll likely not change until she reaches her lowest point, and until then, she's going to be stuck in a place that does no enabling of her demands. No one, not even my parents, have attempted to put any blame on me for my sister's actions this past year. They've had to accept that I had zero fault in this, and they raised my sister to be a narcissist. And enabling a narcissist is also a form of addiction. From what I've seen and heard, my sister has not been diagnosed with any sort of mental illnesses aside from narcissism. In fact, she's smarter than me from what I've heard. She was tested having an IQ of around 110. She just doesn't like to apply herself unless there's some kind of reward in it for her. She was raised this way, and I'm guessing it'll take years to make her better. Current life. As for me, well, I'm doing well on my own. I admit I had to learn to properly budget and take care of all my own necessities. It's not easy to adult, but it's still 1,000 times better than the life I was living with my parents and sister. Someone has brought up that my sister being in a long-term ward for just narcissism makes no sense. I agree that normally it wouldn't. If there's any deeper diagnosis, then it's been kept from me. I can tell there are some things they don't tell me, and I'm not able to just ask the doctor because I'm not my sister's parent. That said, my sister is also very self-destructive. To try and get her way, her threatening to use a knife on herself to get out of boarding school was actually just one of many similar incidents that followed. Since being in the ward, she's been made to realize she's not a princess, but at the same time, she still has a mentality to do whatever it takes to get her way. After my 19th birthday, she made similar threats of self-harm to my parents if they didn't take her out to eat fast food, and then tried to harm herself after being denied. Her most common tactic is to hit her head on a wall. My mother didn't want to report this to the ward, but my father did. My sister can and has committed self-harm for emotional blackmail. In the past month alone, though, her attempts have become fewer from what I know. She also apparently lies and says her own doctors hurt her. But her stories never add up, so I guess on top of narcissism, pathological lying might also be a factor. And all that information I just gave is very likely why she's in a long-term ward. If she was home, my parents would slowly cave to her demands all over again. And then things would just go back to how they were somewhat, which is likely something Little Miss Sunshine is counting on. Final update. I got some better information on Little Miss Sunshine. To start things off, I'm an idiot. Some of you question my saying my sister is smarter than me, pointing out loopholes in my posts and all of that. Well, I had a D and C average in school, and math was my worst subject. It was pointed out I mistakenly, repeatedly stated my sister's age wrong. I'm at fault for that. I usually just tell people she's 10 years younger than me, and when talking about her, the numbers just often blurred together. I guess doing the math correctly on paper this time, I was technically 8 when my sister was born in June, and she first got to blow out my candles when she was 3. I am so bad at math, and it doesn't help I try to keep some details either vague or slightly wrong, just to keep anonymous. But then, in retrospect, this isn't exactly very anonymous, because anyone in my family could read this and know it's me. I really screwed up. From the moment my sister was born, everything about her. This isn't just some lame, jealous older brother stuff. My sister may not have gotten to blow out my candles till she was 3, but even before that, she was also celebrated, just as much on my own birthdays in front of everyone, and I grew extremely resentful. Imagine the birthday boy sitting there while his mother just flaunts a baby in front of everyone because the gathering gave her an excuse to show off. I was basically ignored by my parents until it was time for cake. My grandparents made up the difference, so it wasn't such a bad memory at the time. They even told me it was slightly understandable because my sister had just been born a month prior, and my mother had such a hard time with the pregnancy. But then that's how things went down my 9th birthday, and no one said or did anything about it. Then on my 10th birthday, my parents basically did the same thing and flaunted all of my sister's baby accomplishments before anything really happened for me. Some of my gifts were obvious toddler toys that were only enjoyed by my sister. I remember them being called extra gifts, and even though my name was on them, they weren't for me. Again, no one in the family said or did anything about it. Then on my 11th birthday, that's when things became truly bad. There were gifts with my sister's name on them, and my parents insisted Little Miss Sunshine be allowed to blow out my candles. Everyone saw, and they all did nothing. Following this, the birthday venues were always oriented towards my sister, and sometimes she was even allowed to help me unwrap my presents, too. It wasn't help, they just wanted me to placate her. Now multiply all of that to my 18th birthday, and you'll understand why I finally lost it on everyone. Back then, that's why I say my birthday was taken over for 8 years, but in reality, it was more like 10 years. My parents admitting fault really wasn't enough for me anymore after that. I try to act like I can forgive them, but I'm not sure I ever can. Someone else pointed out to me that you cannot be diagnosed as a narcissist until you're 18. I'm pretty ignorant about this sort of thing and took my father's word for it. So I called my father this morning and spoke to him about it. He first asked me how I knew, and I just responded with Google. He sighed and admitted my sister was showing signs of possible future NPD and some other things, but an official diagnosis can't be made yet. There's also a strong possibility of a mental disorder my mother also apparently has, and they won't tell me what it is. My parents finally admitted my mother was diagnosed with both said disorder and PTSD months ago. The PTSD triggered from some childhood traumas my mother will not disclose, nor am I asking her to because whatever it is, it's pretty bad. When I asked my father why I was told such simplified details and white lies, he got angry and told me it's because my sister's their problem and not mine, so he just thought I'd let it go if he told me that. Then he said they need to be the ones to worry about my sister. I just need to focus on my future and forget about having to deal with Little Miss Sunshine ever again. It's sadly one of the most logical things he's ever said to me. As for Little Miss Sunshine, there's no clear time frame on how long she will be in that ward. But I had another question for my father that someone else alerted me to, and that is if my sister has ever spoken of wanting to kill me while there. The answer was kind of a middle ground. My sister did blame me. However, she blames our parents more. Her main beef with me was her belief that what's hers is hers and what was mine should also be hers. She's even jealous I have my own apartment now, which led to other rage tantrums and demands wanting the same things I have. Therapy has subsided her rage bit by bit over time, which is why she was allowed to be at my 19th birthday. But her behavior that day escalated all over again. Ever see a toddler say mine to anything it sees? Well, my sister has a mine complex with my birthday, and that's 100% on my parents. My sister did, and still does, believe she is entitled onto my birthday because it's been that way as long as she could remember. And Remember, that's why she screamed last year. That's why she freaked out this year. In her mind, my birthday has always been hers. My parents have asked me to please leave the situation alone and that my sister is going to need a lot of time to be treated, and there's no guarantee she'll ever get better. My mother's in therapy herself, and her own disorder is medicated now, and she's often lethargic from the medication. She somehow didn't lose her job when she was temporarily put in a ward herself after hitting my father with a bottle. Her boss is a very sympathetic person and allowed my mother to work from home after getting back, although it resulted in lower pay and some kind of dim ocean. There is another detail I'd like to clarify that I did not mention in my last post. My birthday this year wasn't the actual date of my birth. Instead, we celebrated the day of the belated party that was held for me last year, which is fine with me because the actual day of my birthday has been forever soured to me. I was born basically at the end of July. The belated birthday was held a week later in August, and that's the day I wish to celebrate from now on. Lastly, people keep asking how I'm doing. I was doing fine, if not pretty decent. I admit it's been hard to adult, paying my bills, learning to manage my finances, and all that, but I was fine. Then somehow my coming back to Reddit to talk about this has made me stressed and what's the term? Mentally relapsing, I guess. I'm not sure, I thought I was all good, but now I'm edgy and cynical all the time. My boss even sent me home early for the day because of it. They're well aware of my past, but I still feel terrible. Just having coffee this morning set my heart pounding. I think I'm going to have to search local support groups for free counseling or something. I'm on a budget after all. For the moment, I'm just trying to relax and take my mind off life. I might end up stressed like this all over again if I return here someday, so I may not. I thank everyone who read my posts and understood my pain. You're good people, but I really need to get myself together and put my past behind me. Final thoughts. Rereading my post, I think I got the math wrong again by one number of my age when my sister was born. I typed the whole damn thing too fast and didn't bother to proofread it much. I've been such a hot mess today that my boss told me to take a sick day. I actually threw up this morning just from stress, and I've had a pounding headache all day. I was in and out of the shower repeatedly and just laying in bed most of the time. Only now am I starting to feel better. If I'd known telling the world would make me feel like this, I'd have never done it. What's more, last night, without anyone even telling me about it, I stumbled across another post made only half a month ago where someone had parents just as bad as mine, and they cut up their elder child's cake that their elder child paid for themselves just because their own little Miss Sunshine cried wanting a piece. I mean, the elder child paid for their own custom cake and party, and then the parents decided to cut up their cake the night before because their golden child, who I think was of similar age to my sister, cried wanting the cake. The OP ended up canceling the party entirely, and I don't blame her. Seeing that and being told of similar posts, there are way too many parents out there like mine. Parents who only change through humiliation, but deep down, they're still the same people. I'm going via low contact with my parents, and I'm about to go visit my grandparents to have a talk about the matter. I'm not sure I'm going to want to post here again or even reply to comments. In fact, I dread looking at my inbox. I need a break from Reddit, and I may not come back. And that's the end of this story. What do you guys think about this whole situation? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Let me know in the comments section.